So today I'm going to touch more upon some of the aspects from this course that I'm really taking with me. I just find all of the information we're receiving to be so helpful to improving my public speaking skills. I have found in so many social settings I don't stress as much as I used to. My anxiety is a lot more manageable, and it's kind of amazing to see so much improvement so fast, considering I've only been in this course for 4 weeks now. It was especially interesting because I was recently in a wedding. It was actually an Indian wedding, thus the henna. Um, but I was just finding myself observing a lot of these people and the way they speak to one another, and it was so interesting because none of them seemed to be aware of how they were interacting with one another. I guess it was just one of those situations where because all this information is so fresh in my head, that I'm applying it easier. But I just found it somewhat entertaining to see how eager everyone was to just give their input, and they weren't being very good listeners. Like, I was trying to talk to one of the gals who was also in the bridal party, and she had completely tuned me out. And I went to ask her a question. She had no idea what I was saying. And I'm like, had you been listening, you would have known what I was asking you. I just thought that was kind of humorous. And then, as you know, with weddings come speeches. And it was so funny to see how nervous some of these people were. I mean, with reason. There were over 100 people in the reception room, so the nerves were definitely there. I was talking to the maid of honor, though, and she was just getting so nervous because she had to deliver her maid of honor speech. She had me review it, and I was like, I found myself applying so many of the material from our class to this situation with the maid of honor. She was her breathing, you could just tell, was so heavy. And I said, okay, first test, we need to control your breathing. Let's take deep breaths and just focus on your breathing and be in the moment. And I told her to just kind of gaze around the room and, make eye contact with only a few people. But most importantly, make eye contact with the bride. And it was just so cool to be able to share some of this knowledge with her. And she said it actually really helped her when delivering her speech. Hers was pretty straightforward, to the point, short and sweet, and it went really well. And so, as we were listening to more of the speeches, I was just like thinking to myself, had they only taken this course, they would have been so much better. Had they only taken this course, they would have been, they wouldn't have done that. And it was just interesting to see the difference when you understand the speech process, compared to when you don't. I mean, all overall, I mean, don't get me wrong, the speeches were so beautiful, they were so sentimental, but I feel that had it been me up there, I would have been able to apply so much of this knowledge to that speech. I especially found another situation. I'm going to be using the wedding as an example because there was just so much interaction going on, that I, again, found myself reflecting back to the course material. And it just showed how relevant it is to everyday life. Um, my friend and one of the other bridesmaids were talking about the mother-in-law. They had been worried that the mother-in-law had something on her mind that she didn't want to say. I can't really remember the whole situation, but they were talking about it with one another, and it made me think, like, why not just speak to her directly? I mean, it's just such a better delivery method. It made me think of, again, the speech process and how the message is delivered. And it was in that moment that I realized the channel is just as important as the message, because you want to make sure that you are communicating effectively, that you are communicating openly, but ultimately that your message will be received well. And so, I don't know, I just thought again how it tied into the material that we're learning. I'm just like, this is so relevant. And I don't know. It was, like I said, it all in all, a great, great, great ceremony, but I never realized how applicable this material is. And even as I'm preparing, for our informative speech and whatnot, I find myself just constantly um, reflecting on the topics that we've been discussing, and I am really trying to be more aware of myself. I had a run-in with a coworker of mine, and she expressed to me that what I said did not come off the way I had wanted it to. And at first, my immediate reaction, I wanted to get defensive. But then I had to realize, okay, Janelle, if you are being received this way, what is going wrong with you? Like, I really had to sit there and reflect on what I could have done better. What did I do wrong to miscommunicate this message? Because while my intentions were good, it was not received well. And that is the most important, because whether I could talk at someone till I'm blue in the face, but again, if it's not being received well, if I'm not keeping my audience in mind or the other person in mind, it's going to be ineffective, and my point will never get across, or it's going to come across the wrong way. So again, I thought that was extremely interesting, almost, to see how relevant that was in that situation at that given time. And since then, I've really just tried to be more aware of how I deliver things I want to say, because while I feel I'm coming from a place of love, I need to be aware that that's not how it's always going to be received. And I think that goes back to the speech process again, with the channel and the communication and the message, the speaker, the audience. It just, again, ties into one another. And I find it more often than not, too, that people don't really care how they come across. If they say, oh, I'm speaking the truth. Well, yes, you are speaking the truth, but I feel there's a way to speak the truth. It doesn't need to be rude. It doesn't need to be blunt necessarily. We can speak the truth in a way that is appealing to our audience, but it goes back to keeping the audience in mind. Like, what kind of people are these people? You could be surrounded by a group of people that love just hearing you preach, truth, whatever your truth is, but and say you're yelling, per se, like, there could be people that receive that well. But what happens if you're shouting to get your points across, and you are in a room full of people who are sensitive to that? It does not make for a good match. And so I think it's critical. It's very helpful to understand who your audience is, who your audience is. What is it that you need to do and be mindful of, so that you can assure they're going to be receptive to what you're delivering. I think, too, don't get me wrong, it's important to be aware of it, but we also want to stay true to ourselves. We don't want to lose ourselves in it, because I think that will come across also when delivering a speech. Because again, what we learned this week is the speech will speak for itself. Also, it brings a whole other element to the whole speech delivery. And it's important to be aware of what your message is, and will this be, I guess you want to be aware of what your message is. Not that you want to water it down, but again, it just goes back to, will this be received well? Is this something worth speaking about? Is this something that other people will be passionate about? Again, it's just, I don't know, I guess I never really realized the relevance of the audience. And the audience is everything, because if you don't have an audience, who's going to listen? I would love for these videos or as I get better, for these videos to be used and eventually shared, because I feel it can touch well, I don't know personally if I have information that people want to hear, but I hope that soon I work up to that so that these videos can be fruitful, they can be shared, and they can help others. And I think that's really something you need to think about when putting your message out into this world. Is this something that's going to contribute to an end goal? Is this something worth listening to? Is it useful? Is it relevant? Is it something that someone else will share these same passions? And I feel that will also tie into, doing research on the certain subjects. You want to do research so you know what you're talking about. You want to have that credibility with your audience. I just have been, like, again, so fascinated with how relevant all this material is. I hope that you find it just as relevant, and I look forward to our next time. Thank you.